Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Before we get started, though, do us a favor and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and click that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Today we're diving deep into a topic that's got layers like an onion: corporate social responsibility, or CSR, in India. Whether you're a UPSC aspirant brushing up on governance for the GS2 paper, a student curious about the business world, or just someone who wants to understand how things work, this one's for you. So buckle up, because here's the head scratcher. India is actually the first country in the world to make CSR spending mandatory for companies. What's that all about?
Well, it's fascinating how India decided to formalize this idea of businesses giving back to society. It all started with the Companies Act of 2013. This act essentially lays out the ground rules for how companies in India need to approach their social responsibilities.
Okay, so the Companies Act is like the rule book, but it can't apply to every single business out there, right?
You're right. The act smartly sets criteria to determine which companies are obligated to form a CSR committee and participate. It focuses on companies with a substantial financial capacity, essentially ensuring that those who can afford to contribute are the ones stepping up.
Makes sense. So it's not the neighborhood bakery, we're talking about the big players. But what does this commitment actually look like? How much are they expected to shell out?
Well, here's where it gets interesting. The act mandates that these companies spend at least 2% of their average net profits from the previous 3 years on CSR activities. This 2% isn't just a random figure, it's a significant commitment aimed at driving real change.
2%. That's a serious chunk of change.
Yeah.
So how does the act prevent companies from just, donating a bunch of old computers and calling it a day? What exactly qualifies as a CSR activity under this act?
Well, the act is pretty clear that CSR activities need to go beyond a company's normal day-to-day business. To ensure companies are contributing meaningfully, it lists out 17 broad activities and schedules the 7th, covering everything from eradicating poverty and promoting education to supporting healthcare and ensuring gender equality.
Wow, that's a pretty wide range. It seems like the act is encouraging companies to think outside the boardroom and consider their impact on the bigger picture. Is there any connection between this modern approach and, say, traditional Indian philosophies?
Actually, there's a fascinating link to Gandhi's philosophy of trusteeship. Gandhi believed that anyone who accumulates wealth has a moral duty to use it for the benefit of society as a whole. It's the idea that wealth is held in trust, not for personal gain alone.
So in a way, the Companies Act is taking that very philosophy and putting it into action. By making this sense of trusteeship a legal requirement. It's like saying, hey, you've achieved success now, use your resources to help others.
Exactly.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it makes sense for businesses too. A company can't thrive in a society that's struggling. Investing in areas like education, healthcare, and the environment creates a more stable and prosperous environment for everyone, including businesses.
Right, so it's a two-way street. A healthy society fosters a healthy business environment.
And that idea of needing societal acceptance to operate, it's like a company needs a license to operate from the community itself. We've got the why down, but what about the how? The act mandates spending and outlines broad areas. But how do we know companies are actually following through?
Transparency and accountability are key here. The Companies Act requires companies to be very open about their CSR activities. They have to publish detailed reports outlining their CSR policy, the makeup of their CSR committee, how much they've spent, and even specifics about the projects they've supported.
So it's not just about good intentions, it's about showing the receipts. Companies can't just say they're doing good, they have to prove it.
Absolutely. And if a company doesn't meet its 2% spending target, they can't just sweep it under the rug. They have to publicly explain why. The act is designed to keep companies accountable for their commitments. However, our research also points out that there's a difference between what's on paper and the reality on the ground. Implementation of these CSR initiatives seems to vary quite a bit across the board.
So it's not a perfect system. That 2% is a target.
Right.
But reaching it and reaching it effectively are two different things. What factors cause these differences in implementation?
It's a bit of a mixed bag, really. The effectiveness of CSR implementation seems to fluctuate based on the company's size, the industry they're in, and even which region of India they're operating in.
So a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't quite cut it in the real world. Our sources also highlight some specific challenges that companies stumble upon when trying to meet their CSR goals. What are some of those common roadblocks?
Well, one major hurdle is the nature of long-term projects. Many impactful initiatives, like those focused on sustainable development, require sustained effort and investment over several years. You can't expect to solve complex problems overnight. So a company might allocate funds and be committed to a multi-year project, but seeing the full impact within a single financial year isn't always realistic.
It's like planting a tree. You don't get shade the next day.
Yeah.
Some things take time to grow. What other challenges do companies face?
Another issue is the expertise gap. Many companies are entering the world of social development for the very first time. They have the financial resources and good intentions, but they might lack the in-house know-how to design and implement effective CSR programs. It's a learning curve for many.
So they're essentially venturing into uncharted territory. They need to figure out how to navigate the complexities of social initiatives. On top of that, measuring the real impact of CSR projects, that can't be easy either.
That's a crucial point. How do you truly quantify the effects of, say, a program focused on education or healthcare? Especially when the benefits might take years to fully manifest, it's difficult to pin down a clear-cut cause and effect.
Especially when you're dealing with social issues that are influenced by a web of interconnected factors. This lack of a standardized framework for measuring impact, has that sparked any debate?
Definitely. There's a growing debate about how to approach impact assessment in CSR. Some people argue that we desperately need a more structured system to measure the effectiveness of these initiatives, essentially a way to hold companies accountable not just for how much they spend, but for the actual outcomes they achieve.
So it's not just about ticking boxes, it's about demonstrating real change.
Precisely. But there's also a counter-argument. Some believe that trying to put hard metrics on social impact is inherently flawed. They argue that measuring human well-being is complex and can't be simplified into numbers on a spreadsheet.
It's a fascinating dilemma. On the one hand, you want to ensure that funds are making a difference. But on the other hand, you don't want to stifle creativity and innovation by forcing initiatives into a rigid box of metrics. So how much does a company's size influence its approach to CSR? Does the 2% rule affect them differently?
Absolutely. Company size plays a significant role in how they strategize and implement CSR. Smaller companies with their more limited resources often face a steeper climb in crafting a comprehensive CSR strategy. They might focus on localized initiatives or team up with NGOs to tap into existing expertise.
Whereas larger companies might have the bandwidth to weave CSR more strategically into their overall business operations.
Exactly. They can align their CSR initiatives with their main business goals, creating a synergy that benefits both the company and the community. For instance, a company making consumer goods might launch a campaign to promote sustainable consumption habits. It aligns with their business interests while also tackling environmental concerns.
It's like hitting two birds with one stone. Our source also highlights a difference in CSR spending patterns between public and private sector companies in India. What's the story there?
The numbers tell an interesting story. Research indicates that in the first year of the mandate, public sector companies spent around 66.7% of their allotted CSR budget, while private companies spent closer to 82%. There are a few reasons for this gap.
Let's break that down. What might explain this difference in spending?
For starters, public sector companies often operate in sectors where public perception isn't as critical to their bottom line as it is for private companies. Think of essential service providers. Their services are vital, so customer loyalty isn't as directly tied to their social responsibility initiatives.
Whereas private companies, especially those directly engaging with consumers, are more sensitive to how the public perceives their actions. They understand that CSR activities can impact their brand image and ultimately customer loyalty.
Exactly. And it's worth noting that public sector companies were already encouraged to contribute to social causes before the 2013 Act made it mandatory. They had a head start, so to speak, with existing systems and a culture of incorporating social responsibility into their operations. This might explain why their spending in the first year of the 2% rule was a bit lower.
So it's like they were already ahead of the curve. But it's not just about public versus private. Our sources also point out some significant regional differences in how CSR money is spread across India.
You're right. The distribution of CSR funds across states is far from even. A large chunk of this capital flows into more developed states like Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat. The list goes on.
Why is that? What factors contribute to this unequal distribution?
Well, a couple of things are at play. First, these developed states usually have a greater concentration of manufacturing and industry, which translates to more companies falling under the CSR mandate. Second, they tend to have a more established network of NGOs working on the ground, making it easier for companies to find partners with the expertise to execute social initiatives effectively.
So it's a combination of more companies, a more mature ecosystem for social development work, and perhaps even more active encouragement of CSR by the state governments themselves. But this uneven spread of funds, That raises concerns, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The data, particularly from the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, paints a concerning picture. Poorer states, the ones often with the greatest need for social development programs, are receiving a disproportionately smaller share of CSR funds.
It's almost a paradox. The areas that need the most support are often getting the least.
Exactly. States like Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Bihar, and Madhya Pradesh, home to a large portion of India's aspirational districts, districts identified by the government as needing focused development, received only about 9% of total CSR funds between 2014 and 2018.
That's a stark contrast to the 40% that went to the more developed states during that same period. It underscores the need to bridge this gap and ensure CSR initiatives are truly reaching the communities where they can make the biggest difference. But even with these challenges, there are some inspiring success stories. Our sources highlight the work of companies like Dabur Tata Steel and Toyota Kirloskar.
Yes. These case studies showcase the power of CSR when it's done strategically and with commitment. For instance, Dabur implemented a phenomenal water conservation project in Rajasthan.
Tell me more about this Dabur project. What made it so successful?
They didn't just focus on the immediate issue of water scarcity, they looked at the bigger picture. Their project involved a unique combination of traditional water harvesting techniques and modern technology.
It sounds like they were blending the old and the new.
They were, and it worked wonders. Not only did their efforts recharge groundwater levels, but they also directly benefited over 1,200 farmer families by improving their livelihoods. It's a prime example of how companies can address pressing needs while creating tangible benefits for both the environment and local communities.
So it wasn't just about charity. It was about sustainable solutions that empowered the community. What about the other companies mentioned, Tata Steel and Toyota Kirloskar?
Tata Steel's initiative to tackle neonatal mortality in Jharkhand is another remarkable example. They invested in raising awareness and improving healthcare services in 167 villages.
Wow, that's ambitious. What kind of impact do they see?
The results were striking. In just 3 years, they managed to reduce the neonatal mortality rate from a heart-wrenching 96% to 32.7%. That's a testament to the potential of focused CSR initiatives to drive real change.
It's proof that with dedication and the right approach, businesses can truly be a force for good. What about Toyota Kirloskar?
They focused on the future generation with their Green Me project, which introduced a hands-on environmental education curriculum in 35 government schools. It's a powerful example of investing in future generations and fostering a sense of environmental responsibility from a young age.
It's about planting those seeds early on. It's clear that the story of CSR in India is constantly evolving. We've got the 2013 Act laying the groundwork, but it sounds like the journey didn't stop there.
You're right. The tale continues with the Companies Amendment Act of 2019, which brought in some important adjustments to enhance CSR implementation and effectiveness.
So it's not just a static law. It's a dynamic process, adapting to new challenges and striving for improvement. What are some of the key changes introduced by this amendment?
One significant change addresses the issue of companies struggling to spend their entire CSR budget within a single financial year, especially when they're involved in long-term projects. The amendment now allows companies to transfer unspent CSR funds to a special escrow account where the money can be held for up to 3 years.
So it provides some much-needed flexibility and encourages companies to think long-term with their CSR initiatives.
Exactly. And if the funds remain untouched after 3 years, they must be transferred to a specific government fund, ensuring that the money is still directed towards social causes. It's a safety net to prevent funds from being idle and to guarantee their use for the intended purpose.
It's like a fail-safe mechanism to ensure that the money ultimately serves its intended purpose. Were there any other notable changes?
The amendment also gives more teeth to enforcement. The Serious Fraud Investigation Office, or SFIO, now has more authority to investigate and penalize companies that aren't playing by the CSR rules. It sends a clear message that non-compliance has consequences.
So it's not just a gentle nudge. There are real repercussions for companies that try to skirt their responsibilities.
Absolutely. The amendment also aims to streamline the legal processes by shifting routine matters from the National Company Law Tribunals, or NCLTs, to the central government. This move helps to declutter the system and allows the NCLTs to focus on more complex cases. It's all about improving efficiency and making the legal framework more robust.
It's like clearing the traffic jam to ensure smoother movement. But even with these improvements, there's always room for growth, right? Our sources offer some compelling recommendations to make CSR in India even more impactful. What are some of the key suggestions for improving the effectiveness of CSR in India?
One key recommendation is to bring Schedule the 7th, which lists the approved CSR activities into closer alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. These are a set of global goals adopted by the United Nations to address the world's most pressing challenges.
So it's about connecting India's CSR efforts to a broader global vision for sustainable development.
Exactly. It would provide companies with a clearer roadmap and a set of universally recognized benchmarks to guide their CSR strategies.
It's like giving them a compass and a map to navigate the complexities of social impact. What other recommendations stand out?
Another interesting recommendation is to re-examine the provision that allows companies to contribute to government funds as part of their CSR spending. There's debate about whether this truly embodies the spirit of CSR. Some argue that it allows companies to fulfill their obligations without necessarily driving direct social impact.
It's like taking a shortcut instead of taking the scenic route, which might offer more opportunities for meaningful engagement.
Precisely. So the suggestion is to either scrap this provision entirely or at the very least create a dedicated fund specifically for unspent CSR money, ensuring it's channeled effectively towards social causes.
It's about ensuring that these funds are genuinely being used to address societal needs.
Another crucial recommendation centers on boosting transparency and accountability through enhanced reporting practices. Companies should be more upfront about their project selection processes, the specific locations where they're working, and the partner organizations they're collaborating with. This level of detail would allow for better monitoring and evaluation of their initiatives.
So it's not just about how much they spend, but also the how and where of their spending.
Exactly. And finally, there's a strong push for third-party assessments of CSR projects. Having independent organizations evaluate these initiatives would provide a more objective lens and validate the impact claimed by companies.
It's like having a neutral referee to ensure fair play and accurate scoring.
That's a great analogy. Third-party assessments would not only hold companies accountable, but also provide valuable feedback, helping them refine their approaches and amplify their impact.
So it's a win-win, greater accountability and an opportunity for continuous improvement.
Precisely. Taken together, these recommendations highlight a CSR ecosystem that's continuously evolving and seeking greater effectiveness and impact. It's a journey, and we're all learning along the way.
That's encouraging. It shows that there's a genuine desire to make CSR in India a powerful force for positive change. And that's a conversation we'll continue in the next part of our deep dive, so stay tuned.
And it's exciting to see that the conversation around CSR in India is pushing beyond the existing framework. There's a lot of discussion about creating a new category altogether called social impact companies.
Social impact companies. That sounds like something straight out of a business school case study. What's the thinking behind that?
It's a fascinating concept. The idea is to formally recognize and support businesses that are built with a social mission at their core. These companies would be driven by a clear goal of achieving positive social outcomes, but unlike traditional nonprofits, they'd also be allowed to generate profit.
About the profits. So they wouldn't be strictly charitable organizations.
Exactly. They'd have a dual focus tackling social issues and achieving financial sustainability. And there would be specific regulations on how those profits could be used and distributed, ensuring they're aligned with the company's social mission.
That's a clever model. It could be a game changer. Imagine a whole ecosystem of businesses dedicated to issues like poverty, education, or climate change, all while being financially viable. It seems like a great way to attract more entrepreneurs and investors who are passionate about making a difference.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about acknowledging that social impact and financial sustainability don't have to be mutually exclusive. And speaking of sustainability, there's also a lot of discussion around the tax implications of CSR activities.
Tax benefits. That's something companies always have their eyes on. What's the current situation?
Right now, the tax treatment of different CSR activities can be a bit inconsistent. One of the key recommendations is to streamline this aspect and ensure that all activities listed under Schedule the 7th of the Companies Act receive the same tax benefits.
That makes sense. A level playing field would encourage companies to explore a wider range of CSR initiatives, instead of being swayed by tax advantages. We've talked about measuring impact and ensuring accountability. Are there any specific suggestions on how to make that process more robust?
Absolutely. One of the most important recommendations is encouraging third-party assessments of CSR projects. This means bringing in independent organizations to evaluate the effectiveness of these initiatives.
So it's about getting an unbiased outside perspective. Instead of relying solely on what the company reports, it's like having an independent auditor come in and verify the books.
Precisely. Third-party assessments provide a crucial layer of validation. and offer valuable feedback that can help companies refine their strategies and ensure they're achieving real impact.
It's about moving beyond ticking boxes and fulfilling legal obligations. It's about encouraging a more thoughtful, strategic, and results-oriented approach to CSR.
Absolutely. It's about shifting the mindset from CSR as a mere compliance exercise to CSR as a core element of a company's identity and a driving force behind their operations.
And that shift in perspective, that's a powerful thing. It's about companies acknowledging their responsibility to use their resources and influence to make a positive impact on the world.
And that brings us back to the heart of what CSR in India is all about. It's about building a more equitable and sustainable future where businesses and society thrive together. It's a vision worth working toward. It's clear that CSR in India is not a simple concept. It's a complex and multifaceted issue. It's not just about hitting that 2% target. It's about a fundamental shift in how businesses perceive their role in society. It's about understanding that a company's success is deeply intertwined with the well-being of the community it operates in.
Absolutely. It's about moving beyond superficial acts of philanthropy and embracing a deeper understanding of corporate citizenship and the interconnectedness of business and society. It's remarkable how CSR in India has transformed from a purely voluntary effort to a core legal requirement for businesses. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It really has. We've come a long way from the days when philanthropy was mainly about companies making charitable donations as a way of giving back. Now CSR is woven into the fabric of doing business in India.
It's no longer just about writing a check. It's about integrating social responsibility into the very DNA of a company.
Exactly. Companies are expected to go beyond ad hoc donations and strategically align their CSR initiatives with their core business goals. There's a greater emphasis on measuring and demonstrating the real impact of these initiatives.
And this shift towards a more strategic and accountable approach to CSR, it's been significantly influenced by the government right, specifically the Companies Act of 2013, which really set the stage for mandatory CSR.
Absolutely. The 2013 Act was a watershed moment, making India the first country globally to mandate CSR spending for companies meeting specific criteria. This bold move has fundamentally reshaped the CSR landscape in India.
It's like flipping a switch and suddenly a whole new ecosystem emerges.
Precisely. We've seen a surge in specialized consulting firms, NGOs, and even academic institutions focusing on CSR. It's become a dynamic and rapidly growing field, attracting a lot of talent investment and innovative approaches.
It's exciting to see that kind of energy and innovation directed toward social good. But like any new system, there are bound to be hiccups and areas where we can do better. What are some of the key areas we need to focus on to make CSR in India even more effective?
One area that requires attention is the challenge of impact measurement. While companies are now obligated to report on their CSR spending, there's still a lack of standardized metrics and methodologies to assess the real impact of these initiatives.
So it's like having a speedometer but no clear road signs.
Yeah.
We need better ways to measure if we're actually heading in the right direction and making a tangible difference in the lives of the people these programs are supposed to help.
Precisely. We need more robust data collection analysis and standardized metrics to track progress, identify areas for improvement, and ensure that resources are being allocated effectively.
And it seems like technology could play a transformative role in this area. With digital tools and platforms, we can streamline data collection, analyze information more efficiently, and gain real-time insights into the effectiveness of CSR programs.
Absolutely. Technology can be a game changer for transparency and accountability in CSR. It empowers us to move beyond subjective assessments and make more data-driven decisions.
It's about harnessing the power of technology to amplify the impact of CSR initiatives.
Another crucial aspect is fostering stronger collaboration between companies and the communities they aim to serve. We've discussed the importance of aligning CSR initiatives with the genuine needs and priorities of those communities.
It's about moving beyond a top-down approach where companies come in with predetermined solutions. It's about listening to the communities, understanding their unique challenges, and working together to co-create solutions that are truly sustainable and impactful.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about shifting from a transactional mindset to a more participatory and inclusive model of CSR.
And this requires a change in mindset on both sides, doesn't it? Companies need to be more open to listening and collaborating, and communities need to be empowered to articulate their needs and hold companies accountable.
Exactly. It's about building relationships based on mutual respect, trust, and a shared commitment to creating positive change.
And of course, we can't overlook the role of the government in shaping a more enabling environment for CSR.
Absolutely. The government has a critical role to play in streamlining regulations, providing incentives, and promoting a culture of CSR.
So it's about making it easier for companies to navigate the complexities of CSR, rewarding those who are going above and beyond, and showcasing best practices to inspire others.
Precisely. It's about creating a supportive ecosystem where CSR can truly flourish and achieve its full potential.
Ultimately, it's about recognizing that CSR is not just a legal box to check, but an incredible opportunity to leverage the power of business to build a more just equitable and sustainable future for India. It's a vision worth striving for, and it's exciting to witness the progress unfolding.
I couldn't agree more. There's a palpable sense of momentum and optimism surrounding CSR in India. I'm confident that we will continue to be a global leader in this movement, inspiring others to follow suit.
And that's what makes this deep dive so enriching. It's not just about understanding the mechanics of CSR in India. It's about exploring the potential of business to be a powerful force for good in the world.
And it's about acknowledging that we all have a role to play in shaping a more just and sustainable future.
Well said. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into corporate social responsibility in India. We hope this episode has provided you with a comprehensive understanding of its evolution, the legal framework, the challenges, and the vast opportunities that lie ahead. We've seen how India's unique approach to mandating CSR spending has created a dynamic and evolving landscape, one that holds immense potential for positive social impact. Whether you're a UPSC aspirant prepping for the GS2 paper, a student exploring the intersection of business and society, or simply someone curious about how we can build a better world, we encourage you to stay engaged in this conversation. Remember, CSR is not just about fulfilling legal obligations. It's about recognizing the profound interconnectedness between business and society and embracing the power of collaboration to create a future where everyone can thrive. If you found this deep dive insightful, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep pushing for a better world.